Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're part of our journey. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and get ready for a story that will leave you thinking. And if you love inspiring tales, a like goes a long way. "You're fired!" The words cut through the elegant din of clinking glasses and society laughter like a gunshot. The young waiter froze, his face draining of color as the expensive wine seeped deeper into the businessman's custom Italian suit. Hundreds of eyes turned to witness the public execution of a career. The charity gala at the Waldorf Astoria had been proceeding with mechanical perfection until that moment. Celebrities and titans of industry mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, their casual conversations determining the fates of companies and careers. The accident, a single misstep on a recently polished floor, had lasted mere seconds, but its consequences stretched instantly into a young man's uncertain future. From the corner of the room, partially obscured by an elaborate ice sculpture, a figure observed the unfolding drama with unusual intensity. While other guests pretended not to notice or whispered behind manicured hands, Robert Downey Jr. set his champagne flute down with deliberate care. His eyes, having witnessed both Hollywood's cruelty and its redemption, narrowed slightly as the businessman continued his tirade against the trembling waiter. If this moment made you feel something, imagine what's coming next. Hit that like button and stay with us. Subscribe now. Alex Mercer had practiced his serving technique for weeks. At 22, with student loans mounting and his mother's medical bills piling up, this catering gig at the annual Children's Hospital benefit was supposed to be his salvation. $300 for one night, plus potential tips from the wealthiest pockets in Manhattan. He'd ironed his uniform twice, polished his shoes until they gleamed, and arrived 2 hours early just to familiarize himself with the layout. Now, as he stood paralyzed under the collective gaze of New York's elite, his dreams evaporated into the perfumed air. The businessman, Maxwell Harrington, venture capitalist, donor of the hospital's new oncology wing, and owner of the now ruined Brioni suit, was not finished with his humiliation. "Incompetent," he spat, dabbing at the spreading stain with a white napkin someone had hastily offered. "Do you have any idea what this suit costs? More than you'll make in 3 months?" The event manager, a thin woman with a permanent smile that now looked more like a grimace, nodded apologetically at Harrington while firmly gripping Alex's arm, already steering him toward the kitchen doors. The murmurs rippled through the crowd like waves. Some guests feigned interest in their appetizers, while others watched with undisguised fascination. The charity event, supposedly focused on raising money for children with cancer, had momentarily transformed into a theater of class division. A few uncomfortable glances were exchanged. A woman in diamonds worth millions nervously adjusted her necklace. No one spoke up. "Please, sir," Alex finally managed, his voice barely audible over the now resuming string quartet. "It was an accident. The floor was just waxed and But Harrington raised a manicured hand, silencing him with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to ending conversations at will. "Save it. People like you always have excuses." "Jennifer," he addressed the event manager without looking at her. "I expect this person removed immediately and a complimentary cleaning service arranged." Jennifer nodded vigorously, her clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield. "Of course, Mr. Harrington. We deeply apologize for this incident. Alex, please return your serving materials and collect your things." Robert Downey Jr. had been nursing the same glass of champagne for the past hour. He'd attended hundreds of these events over his career, first as the troubled bad boy of Hollywood, later as its ultimate comeback story. Tonight was supposed to be another standard appearance. Smile for photos, write a generously sized check, and slip out before the speeches dragged on too long. He wasn't even at his assigned table. having wandered to a quieter corner to observe the room's dynamics. From his vantage point, he could see what others missed. The waiter's hands had been trembling even before the accident. The young man had the look of someone carrying the weight of responsibilities beyond his years, a look Robert recognized from his own reflection during darker times. The businessman's reaction seemed theatrical, performed for the benefit of his associates at the table who chuckled obligingly. Most tellingly, Robert noticed how no one around the table offered the young man any assistance or defense. As Alex was escorted toward the kitchen, his shoulders hunched in defeat, Robert set his untouched champagne on a nearby table. The actor's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, the casual amusement replaced by something more focused, more deliberate. He had not planned on being memorable tonight, but some situations he had learned throughout his journey of recovery and redemption required intervention, especially when they echoed the very privilege and indifference this charity claimed to combat. Things are about to take a turn. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe, like our video, and keep watching. The kitchen door swung shut behind Alex with a damning finality. Inside, the contrast with the Gala's opulence was stark. Stainless steel, harsh fluorescent lighting, and the controlled chaos of service staff rushing to prepare the next course. Several colleagues gave him sympathetic glances but kept their distance, afraid the bad luck might be contagious. The head chef, a veteran of high society disasters, barely looked up from his plating. "Tough break, kid. Harrington's a regular donor. They weren't going to side with you." Alex emptied his pockets of tips, all of $17, and placed his bow tie on the counter. His hands were still shaking. "My mom's treatment is due next week," he said to no one in particular, voice hollow. The serving jacket came off next, carefully hung as though the small act of respect might somehow balance the universe's ledger against him. The night manager tersely explained that his final pay would be docked for the cleaning of Harrington's suit, a deduction that would leave him with almost nothing for the night's work. Outside in the alley behind the hotel's service entrance, Alex leaned against the cold brick wall. The early March air bit through his thin white shirt, but he barely noticed. His phone displayed 3 missed calls from his mother. How could he tell her? The hospital wouldn't wait another month. The collection agencies wouldn't stop calling. His carefully constructed house of financial cards had just collapsed with a single misstep on polished marble. Back in the ballroom, Maxwell Harrington had already moved on, regaling his table with anecdotes about his recent yacht purchase, while a hotel staff member discreetly blotted his suit. The incident became merely another story to tell, evidence of the incompetence one must tolerate when dealing with the help. Yet a subtle discomfort lingered among some guests, an unspoken acknowledgement that the punishment had far exceeded the crime. Robert Downey Jr. moved with purpose now, weaving between tables with nods of recognition to familiar faces, but never stopping long enough for conversation. His destination was the event coordinator who stood near the entrance, reorganizing the serving staff to cover Alex's absence. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying the same charismatic intensity that had made Tony Stark a cultural phenomenon. "That waiter who just got fired. Where would I find him?" The coordinator blinked in surprise, momentarily starstruck. "Mr. Downey, I'm so sorry about the disruption to your evening. I assure you we're handling the situation." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "These temporary staff sometimes don't understand the standards required for events of this caliber." Robert's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes made her step back slightly. "I didn't ask for an explanation," he said, his tone pleasant but firm. "I asked where I could find him." The service alley was illuminated only by a single security light and the glow of Alex's phone screen as he tried to compose a text to his mother. Each attempt seemed inadequate, each explanation hollow. The metallic click of the service door opening made him quickly wipe away the moisture that had gathered in his eyes. Probably another server sneaking a break. He straightened, preserving what little dignity remained. "Got a light?" The voice was unmistakable, that particular cadence that had delivered some of cinema's most memorable lines. Alex turned slowly, certain he was hallucinating. But there stood Robert Downey Jr., hands in the pockets of a suit that likely cost more than Alex's annual rent, regarding him with an expression that combined curiosity and something harder to define. I don't smoke," Alex stammered, then awkwardly added, "Sir?" A ghost of a smile passed across the actor's face. "Good choice. Took me decades to kick the habit." He leaned against the wall beside Alex, seemingly unbothered by the grime that would transfer to his designer suit. "That was quite a performance in there. Not yours. His." Alex stared at the ground, embarrassment flooding back. "You saw that?" Robert chuckled, but there was no mockery in it. "Everyone saw it. That was rather the point, wasn't it? Public humiliation as a power play." He tilted his head, studying the younger man. "What's your name?" "Your real name, not what's on that name tag they make you wear. This story is only getting deeper. What would you do in this situation? Comment below, and let's talk." "Alexander Mercer," he replied, still disbelieving this moment was real. "Everyone calls me Alex." Robert nodded as though the name confirmed something he'd suspected. "Well, Alex Mercer, here's what's going to happen. We're going back inside." Seeing Alex's immediate panic, he raised a hand. "Not to apologize. You did nothing wrong. We're going back because I'm Robert Downey Jr., and while that shouldn't matter in a rational world, in this particular universe, it grants me certain privileges." The sardonic self-awareness in his tone made Alex relax slightly. "I can't go back in there," Alex protested weakly. "I was fired. Mr. Harrington is an important donor and—" Robert cut him off with a dismissive wave. "Maxwell Harrington donated $2 million last year to have his name on a plaque. I donated $5 anonymously because children shouldn't die of treatable diseases regardless of whose name is on the building." He straightened from the wall, brushing off his suit with casual indifference to the dust. "And tonight, I'll probably donate more, because that's why we're all supposedly here." Alex stood rooted to the spot as Robert pulled open the service door, holding it expectantly. "Coming?" When Alex still hesitated, the actor's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Trust me, kid. I've been the villain in my own story. I've also been the comeback. Tonight you get to experience the latter, but the window of opportunity for dramatic entrances is closing rapidly." The ballroom had transitioned to dinner service, the earlier commotion seemingly forgotten as waiters circulated with precisely timed efficiency. Harrington's table erupted in practiced laughter at something he said, the sound cutting through the elegant background music. The first indication that something had changed was the gradual diminishing of conversations as heads turned toward the main entrance, where Robert Downey Jr. had reappeared with Alex walking uncertainly beside him. Robert's hand rested lightly on the young man's shoulder in a gesture of casual but unmistakable solidarity. They made an incongruous pair, Hollywood royalty and the fired server, but something in Robert's deliberate stride prevented staff from intervening. The event coordinator moved to intercept them, her professional smile strained. "Mr. Downey, there seems to be some confusion." "No confusion," Robert replied pleasantly. "Just a correction." He continued past her, guiding Alex directly toward the center of the room where the evening's host was preparing to take the stage for fundraising announcements. A ripple of whispers followed their progress. phones emerged discreetly to capture whatever was unfolding. When they reached the small stage, Robert leaned in to speak briefly with the host, whose eyes widened before he nodded and stepped aside, offering Robert the microphone. The actor took it with the ease of someone who had commanded attention in rooms far more intimidating than this one, his free hand still resting on Alex's shoulder. "Good evening," Robert began, his voice carrying the same magnetic quality that had made his characters iconic. "For those who don't know me, I'm Robert Downey Jr. I play heroes in movies, which is significantly easier than being one in real life." A gentle chuckle rippled through the audience. "Tonight we're here for the Children's Cancer Foundation, an organization close to my heart because they believe every child deserves care regardless of their parents' bank accounts." His gaze swept the room, pausing briefly but noticeably on Harrington, who shifted uncomfortably. "This is Alex," Robert continued, gesturing to the young man beside him. "Until about 20 minutes ago, he was serving your drinks and appetizers. Now he's up here with me because I think his story matters to what we're doing tonight." The room had fallen completely silent. Alex works 3 jobs to help pay for his mother's cancer treatments, the kind of treatments that would be covered if the hospital wing we're fundraising for tonight existed when she was diagnosed. Robert's tone remained conversational but gained an edge of steel. Earlier, Alex had an accident, a slip on a freshly waxed floor. In response, he was publicly humiliated, fired, and told his final paycheck would be docked. The actor paused, allowing the words to settle across the room. "I found that particularly interesting at an event where we're raising money to help people who've experienced bad luck through no fault of their own. It's not over yet. The best part is coming. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it." The silence in the ballroom was absolute. At Harrington's table, associates who had laughed at his jokes moments earlier now studied their plates with sudden interest. Smartphone cameras remained discreetly raised, documenting a moment that would soon circulate through social media channels across the country. Robert's gaze returned to the broader audience, his expression softening. "I've been fortunate in my life. Second chances, redemption, opportunities to make things right. Not everyone gets those chances." He turned to Alex. "So tonight, I'm donating $50,000 specifically for your mother's treatment fund." Alex's eyes widened, his composure finally breaking as the reality of what was happening sank in. Before he could respond, Robert continued, "And I'm matching donations from anyone in this room who'd like to contribute to a general fund for families like Alex's who fall through the cracks of our healthcare system." The host returned to the stage, visibly moved but professional enough to recognize a fundraising opportunity. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have donation cards at every table. Please indicate if you'd like to contribute to this new emergency fund." People began reaching for pens immediately. From the back of the room, someone began to applaud. The sound spread, building into sustained applause that wasn't just for Robert's generosity, but seemed to carry an acknowledgement of a deeper truth that had been exposed. Maxwell Harrington stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. All eyes turned to him as he straightened his still-stained jacket and approached the stage. The room collectively held its breath, anticipating confrontation. When he reached the steps, Robert's posture shifted subtly, not aggressive, but certainly prepared. But Harrington surprised everyone by extending his hand, first to Alex, who hesitantly shook it, and then to Robert. "You made your point," Harrington said, his voice just loud enough to be heard by those nearby. "Put me down for $50,000 to match yours." He turned to face the room, "And the suit is forgotten." The calculated move of a businessman who recognized when a situation had turned against him, yet it still drew appreciative murmurs from the crowd. Image rehabilitation had begun. Later, as the event continued with a renewed sense of purpose and authenticity, Alex found himself seated at Robert's table, still in his server's shirt but now treated as a guest. The event coordinator had recovered admirably, arranging for Alex's mother to be contacted about the new medical fund being established. Phones throughout the ballroom displayed real-time updates of the impromptu fundraiser that had already exceeded $300,000 and was growing as the video spread beyond the ballroom's walls. "Why did you do it?" Alex finally asked, when he found a moment alone with Robert as the evening wound down. The actor considered the question, taking a sip of water. He'd switched from champagne hours ago. "I've been both the guy getting humiliated and the guy doing the humiliating," he answered with the frank self-awareness that had become his trademark in interviews. "The suit doesn't make the man. Sometimes it just hides him." He glanced across the room where Harrington was now enthusiastically describing his contribution to the new fund. "He's not evil, you know, just comfortable in a world where consequences rarely apply to him." Robert's eyes returned to Alex, but that doesn't mean he shouldn't occasionally face them. 3 days later, a video compilation of the event had accumulated over 2 million views. Robert Downey Jr. class act trended briefly, alongside "Check the suit it doesn't make the man." The Children's Cancer Foundation reported record donations for March. Alex received job offers from 3 upscale restaurants whose owners recognized the value of staff who maintain dignity under pressure. His mother's treatment was fully funded for the coming year. And somewhere in Robert Downey Jr.'s extensive wardrobe, a designer suit with a barely noticeable cleaning tag hung as a reminder that true heroism rarely involves CGI or carefully scripted dialogue, but rather small moments of standing beside someone who has been knocked down and helping them rise again. Wow, what a story! If this moved you, imagine what else we have for you. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and let us know what you think.